The stars looked different from the bridge of the horizon's edge. Commander Jake Morrison stood at the main viewport, watching the massive alien space station grow larger as they approached. After 3 months of travel, humanity was about to make first contact with the Zelkan Empire. "Sir, they're sending us docking instructions," said Lieutenant Amy Clark from the communications station. Her voice carried excitement mixed with nervousness. Everyone on the ship felt the same way. Jake nodded and turned to face his crew. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Captain Lisa Hughes walked over from her station, checking her tablet one more time. "All diplomatic protocols are ready," Lisa said. "The cultural exchange team has studied their customs for months. We should make a good impression." Dr. Nathan Carter looked up from his science station. He had been studying the alien technology readings for hours. "Their tech is impressive, but not impossible to understand. Maybe we can learn from each other." Jake smiled. That was the hope. Earth had detected the Zelkan signals 2 years ago. The aliens seemed willing to talk, which was more than humanity had dared to hope for. The United Earth government had spent months preparing for this moment. The docking process went smoothly. The Zelkan station was huge, easily 10 times larger than anything humans had built. As they walked through the docking tube, Jake felt the weight of history on his shoulders. He was leading humanity's first steps into a larger galaxy. The Zelkans were waiting for them in a large reception area. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with green-scaled skin and yellow eyes that seemed to study everything. Their leader, who introduced himself as Sub-Commander Krex, wore elaborate armor decorated with symbols of rank. "Welcome, humans," Krex said through a translation device. His voice was deep and rumbling. "The Empire is curious about your species." Jake stepped forward and offered the traditional human handshake. Krex looked at the extended hand for a moment before awkwardly copying the gesture. His grip was strong enough to crush bones, but he was careful. "We're honored to be here," Jake replied. "Earth hopes this is the beginning of a long friendship between our peoples." Krex made a sound that might have been laughter. "Friendship? Yes, perhaps that is possible." The tour of the station took several hours. The Zelkans showed them amazing technology, machines that could reshape matter, computers that thought faster than any human mind, and weapons that could destroy entire ships with a single shot. But Jake noticed something in how the Zelkans acted. They seemed to view humans as children looking at adult toys. Dr. Carter was fascinated by everything he saw. He asked countless questions about how their systems worked. The Zelkan scientists seemed amused by his curiosity but answered patiently. They clearly thought human technology was primitive. Captain Hughes focused on learning about Zelkan culture and society. She discovered that the Empire controlled hundreds of worlds and dozens of species. The Zelkans were the ruling race, with other species serving various roles in their society. Some were workers, others were soldiers, and a few were kept as what the Zelkans called curiosities. "What exactly is a curiosity?" Lisa asked during one of the cultural briefings. The Zelkan explaining their society, Administrator Vex, tilted his large head. "Species that amuse us. They have interesting traits but are not useful for important work. We keep them comfortable and safe, like pets." Lisa felt a chill at those words but kept her expression neutral. She made a mental note to include this in her report to Earth. The human delegation included several families as part of the cultural exchange program. The idea was to show that humans were a peaceful, family-oriented species. Ryan Walsh, a civilian engineer, had brought his 8-year-old son Kevin. The boy was excited about meeting real aliens and had spent the entire journey asking questions about what they might be like. Kevin quickly became popular with the human crew. He was smart, curious, and fearless in the way that only children could be. Even some of the Zelkans seemed charmed by him, though they clearly didn't understand why humans brought their young on such missions. "In our society, children remain in protected areas until they are fully grown," explained Administrator Vex when Lisa asked about Zelkan families. "They are too fragile and unpredictable to be useful." Over the following days, the meetings continued. The Zelkans offered humanity a place in their empire. They would provide protection and technology in exchange for human labor and resources. Earth would become a protected world under Zelkan guidance. Jake felt uncomfortable with the offer. The terms made it sound like humanity would become servants rather than partners. But the Zelkans had technology that was centuries ahead of human capabilities. Their ships could travel faster than light with ease, while humanity had only recently developed their first crude faster-than-light drive. "We need to discuss this with our government," Jake told Sub-Commander Krex during one of their meetings. "Humanity doesn't make decisions this important quickly." Krex's yellow eyes seemed to glow with amusement. "Of course. Take time to consider. The Empire has waited this long to contact you. We can wait a little longer for your answer." But Jake sensed that the Zelkan patience had limits. There was something in their tone that suggested they expected humanity to accept their offer. The alternative seemed to be that humans would be left alone in space, cut off from the galactic community. Dr. Carter had discovered during his studies that the Zelkans had contacted other species in similar ways. Most had joined the Empire willingly after seeing demonstrations of Zelkan power. A few had refused and found themselves facing Zelkan fleets until they changed their minds. As the days passed, Jake began to understand the true nature of the Zelkan Empire. It wasn't a partnership of equals. It was a hierarchy with the Zelkans at the top and everyone else serving them in various ways. The technology and protection they offered came with a price: freedom. The human delegation continued to smile and ask questions and learn about Zelkan society. But privately, Jake began to worry about what would happen when they returned to Earth with news of the Empire's offer. Humanity had always valued independence. The idea of becoming junior partners in an alien empire would not sit well with many people. Kevin Walsh continued to explore the station with wide-eyed wonder. He made friends with some of the younger human crew members and even managed to communicate with a few alien species that served the Zelkans. His innocence and joy provided a bright spot during the increasingly tense negotiations. Nobody knew that the boys' laughter and curiosity would soon lead to tragedy that would change the galaxy forever. The diplomatic reception was held in the station's grandest hall. Golden pillars reached up to a ceiling painted with scenes of Zelkan conquests across the galaxy. Hundreds of beings from different species mingled under the watchful eyes of Zelkan guards. The Empire wanted to show humans how many different peoples served under their rule. Commander Jake Morrison wore his best dress uniform as he moved through the crowd with Captain Lisa Hughes. They had spent hours preparing for this event, studying Zelkan customs to avoid any mistakes. The Empire had made it clear that proper behavior was expected from their guests. Dr. Nathan Carter stood near a display of Zelkan artifacts, talking with several alien scientists. His eyes lit up as he examined each piece of technology. The Zelkans seemed pleased by his obvious interest in their achievements. Ryan Walsh kept a close eye on his son Kevin as the boy wandered around the reception hall. The 8-year-old was fascinated by everything he saw. Alien beings he had only read about in Earth's databases were walking and talking right in front of him. Kevin tried to be on his best behavior, but his excitement was hard to contain. High Chancellor Vorthak entered the hall with great ceremony. He was larger than most Zelkans, with darker scales and more elaborate armor. Golden symbols covered his chest plate, marking him as one of the Empire's most powerful leaders. The crowd fell silent as he approached the center of the room. "Today marks a new chapter in galactic history," Vorthak announced, his voice booming through translation devices. "Another species seeks to join our great empire. The humans will learn the benefits of Zelkan guidance, as so many others have before them." Jake felt uncomfortable with the way Vorthak spoke about humanity. The Chancellor made it sound like humans had already agreed to join the Empire. But Jake kept his expression neutral and applauded politely when the speech ended. The reception continued with demonstrations of Zelkan culture. Warriors performed combat rituals with energy weapons that sparked and flashed. Musicians played instruments that created sounds unlike anything humans had ever heard. Servers offered foods from dozens of different worlds. Kevin Walsh watched everything with wonder. He had never imagined that the galaxy held so many different forms of life. When his father became distracted by a conversation with a Zelkan engineer, Kevin decided to explore on his own. The boy wandered through the crowd, careful to stay polite and quiet as his parents had taught him. He found himself drawn to a display case in an alcove near the edge of the hall. Inside the case was a beautiful crystal object that seemed to glow with its own light. The crystal was shaped like a star and had strange symbols carved into its surface. Kevin had always loved puzzles and interesting objects. His teachers on Earth often praised his curiosity about how things worked. The crystal looked like nothing he had ever seen before. He wondered what it was made of and how it created its own light. The display case was surrounded by a low barrier, but Kevin was small enough to slip through easily. He just wanted to get a closer look at the amazing crystal. The boy had no way of knowing that the object was sacred to the Zelkan people. As Kevin leaned forward to examine the crystal more closely, his shoulder accidentally bumped against the display case. The case rocked slightly but didn't fall over. The crystal inside shifted position but remained undamaged. To any reasonable person, it was a minor accident that caused no harm. But High Chancellor Vorthak saw what happened. The powerful Zelkan leader had been watching the human delegation throughout the evening. He had noticed the human child wandering around the reception hall. In Zelkan society, children were kept hidden away until they reached adulthood. The idea of bringing young ones to important ceremonies seemed barbaric to him. When Vorthak saw Kevin touch the sacred artifact, his yellow eyes blazed with fury. The crystal was a relic from the first Zelkan homeworld, blessed by their ancient priests and carried into battle by their greatest warriors. No alien was supposed to even look at it closely, much less touch its container. Guards! Vorthak roared, his voice cutting through all conversation in the hall. The reception fell silent. Every being in the room turned to see what had caused the Chancellor's anger. Kevin looked up from the crystal display, confused by the sudden attention. He could see that the large Zelkan leader was upset, but he didn't understand why. Ryan Walsh pushed through the crowd toward his son, fear growing in his chest. He could see the rage in Vorthak's eyes and knew something terrible was about to happen. "Kevin, come here right now," Ryan called out, but Zelkan guards were already moving to surround the boy. Vorthak strode across the hall, his heavy footsteps echoing off the walls. The crowd parted before him like water. His hand moved to the energy staff hanging at his side, a weapon that served as both a symbol of his rank and a tool of punishment. "You dare defile our sacred relic?" Vorthak shouted at Kevin. The translation device made his words sound even more threatening. "Your species has no respect for the sacred. You are animals pretending to be civilized." Kevin tried to step back, but there was nowhere to go. The display case was behind him and Zelkan guards blocked every other direction. The boy's eyes filled with tears as he realized he had done something wrong. "I'm sorry," Kevin said in a small voice. "I didn't mean to hurt anything. I was just looking." But Vorthak was beyond reason. In his mind, the human child represented everything he despised about weaker species. They were careless, disrespectful, and unworthy of the Empire's protection. The Chancellor raised his energy staff high above his head. "No!" Ryan Walsh screamed as he fought against the guards holding him back. Jake Morrison and Lisa Hughes rushed forward, but more Zelkan warriors blocked their path. Dr. Carter shouted for someone to stop what was happening. The entire human delegation watched in horror as Vorthak brought his staff down. The energy weapon struck Kevin in the chest with a blast of white-hot power. The 8-year-old boy was thrown backward against the display case. His small body crumpled to the floor and lay still. The hall fell into absolute silence. Ryan Walsh's cry of anguish echoed off the walls. He broke free from the guards and ran to his son's side. But it was too late. Kevin's eyes stared sightlessly at the painted ceiling above. The boy who had been so excited to meet aliens and explore the galaxy would never see Earth again. High Chancellor Vorthak looked down at the small body without any expression of regret. To him, he had simply corrected a mistake. The human child had shown disrespect to a sacred object and had been punished accordingly. In the Zelkan way of thinking, the punishment fit the crime. "Let this be a lesson," Vorthak announced to the silent crowd. "The Empire demands respect from all who seek our protection. Those who cannot learn proper behavior will face the consequences." The Chancellor walked away as if nothing important had happened. The reception was over. The hours after Kevin Walsh's murder passed in a blur of shock and growing anger. Commander Jake Morrison sat in the station's medical bay, watching Dr. Nathan Carter examine the boy's body. The Zelkin medical staff had refused to help, claiming they were not equipped to treat human injuries. "There's nothing I can do," Nathan said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. The energy weapon destroyed his heart and lungs instantly. He wouldn't have felt any pain. Ryan Walsh sat beside his son's body, holding the small hand that would never move again. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered apologies for not protecting Kevin. Captain Lisa Hughes stood nearby, her own eyes red from crying. The entire human delegation was in shock. Jake had seen combat before, but this was different. Kevin had been an innocent child, guilty of nothing more than curiosity. The boy's death felt like a wound in Jake's chest that would never heal. Sub-Commander Krex entered the medical bay with several guards. His expression was unreadable as he looked at the grieving humans. "The High Chancellor wishes to speak with your delegation," he announced. "About what?" Jake asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "About the unfortunate accident that occurred during the reception," Krex replied. Jake stood up slowly, his hands clenched into fists. "Accident? Your Chancellor murdered a child in cold blood." "That wasn't an accident." Krex's yellow eyes remained calm. "The human youth suffered a medical emergency during the ceremony. Our records will show that he died of natural causes related to the stress of interstellar travel." The lie was so bold that Jake could hardly believe what he was hearing. "We all saw what happened. Hundreds of beings witnessed Vorthak kill Kevin with his energy staff." "You are mistaken," Krex said firmly. "No such event occurred. The child's death was regrettable but natural. The Empire extends its sympathy to the family." Captain Hughes stepped forward, her face pale with rage. "You can't cover this up. We have recordings of everything that happened. The truth will come out." Krex made a gesture, and the guards moved closer to the humans. All recording devices were disabled during the ceremony for security reasons. No such recordings exist. Any claims to the contrary would be considered false propaganda against the Empire. Dr. Carter looked up from his medical scanners. "The energy burns on Kevin's body prove he was killed by a Zelkin weapon. The evidence is clear. Your medical examination will show that the human child died of heart failure," Krex stated. "Our medical staff will provide the official report. Any other conclusions would be incorrect." Jake realized that the Zelkins were not just covering up Kevin's murder, they were threatening to falsify all the evidence. The Empire's power was so great that they believed they could rewrite reality itself. "We demand justice," Jake said. Kevin Walsh was an innocent child under diplomatic protection. His murder violates every law of civilized conduct. Krex's expression didn't change. "There was no murder. The human delegation will accept the official report and return to their ship. Any attempt to spread false information about the Empire will be considered an act of war." The threat hung in the air like poison. Jake looked around the medical bay at his shocked crew members. Earth's first contact with an alien civilization had turned into a nightmare. Over the next few hours, the humans tried desperately to find justice for Kevin. They demanded to speak with higher authorities, but were told that High Chancellor Vorthak's word was final. They asked to contact Earth, but discovered that all their communications were being blocked. Captain Tony Rodriguez of the escort vessel Freedom's Call received permission to dock with the station. Jake hoped that having another ship would give them more options, but the Zelkins made it clear that both human vessels were essentially prisoners. "We can't just leave," Tony said during a secret meeting in Jake's quarters. "That boy deserves justice. If we try to fight, they'll destroy both our ships," Jake replied. "Their weapons are too advanced. We'd all die and Kevin's death would still be covered up." Lisa Hughes had been working on the communication systems, trying to find a way to send word to Earth. "I managed to get a brief signal through their jamming," she reported. "I sent an encrypted message about what really happened here." It was a small victory, but Jake knew it might be their only chance to tell Earth the truth. The Zelkins were clearly planning to send the human delegation home with a false story about Kevin's death. The next morning, Sub-Commander Krex delivered the Empire's final decision. The humans were being expelled from Zelkin space immediately. Any attempt to return would be considered an invasion and met with military force. The Empire has reconsidered its offer to humanity, Krex announced. Your species is too primitive and unpredictable to benefit from our guidance. You will return to your home system and remain there. Jake wanted to argue, but he knew it was pointless. The Zelkins had made their decision. They were sending humanity back to Earth with a clear message: accept our version of events or face the consequences. As the human ships prepared to leave the station, Jake took one last look at the place where Kevin had died. The boy's body was being transported back to Earth in a sealed container, along with the false medical report claiming he had died of natural causes. Ryan Walsh had not spoken to anyone since his son's death. The broken father sat in his quarters, staring at nothing. Jake knew that Ryan would carry this pain for the rest of his life. The whole crew would. The journey back to Earth took 3 months. During that time, Jake and his officers prepared their real report about what had happened. They documented every detail of Kevin's murder and the Empire's cover-up. They also included their observations about Zelkin society and military capabilities. The encrypted message that Lisa had managed to send had reached Earth ahead of them. When the human ships arrived in the solar system, they found President Helen Barnes waiting with a full cabinet meeting. Jake stood before Earth's leaders and told them the truth about humanity's first contact with aliens. He described Kevin's innocent curiosity, Vorthax rage, and the brutal murder that followed. He explained how the Empire had tried to cover up the crime and threatened war if humans spoke about it. They treated us like animals, Jake concluded. In their eyes, Kevin's life had no value because he was human. They expect us to accept their lies and be grateful for their mercy in letting us live. President Barnes listened to every word without interruption. When Jake finished his report, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke in a voice that was calm but filled with steel. The Zelkin Empire has made a grave mistake, she said. They killed an innocent child and believe they can threaten us into silence. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Jake felt a chill at the president's words. He had delivered his report expecting Earth to mourn Kevin's death and perhaps file diplomatic protests. But he could see something else in the president's eyes, a cold fury that promised the galaxy was about to change. Within hours of Jake's report, emergency sessions were called in every major government on Earth. The news of Kevin Walsh's murder spread quickly through military and political circles. By the end of the day, humanity was preparing for something the Zelkin Empire had never imagined: war. The news of Kevin Walsh's murder spread across Earth like wildfire. Within days, every human on the planet knew about the 8-year-old boy who had been killed by aliens for touching a display case. The story united humanity in a way that nothing had before. President Helen Barnes stood before the United Earth Assembly, addressing representatives from every nation. Behind her, a holographic image showed Kevin's smiling face, the same photo his father had taken just before they left for the diplomatic mission. Today, we face a choice that will define humanity's future, Barnes said. We can accept that our children's lives have no value to the Zelkin Empire, or we can show them the true strength of the human spirit. The assembly erupted in applause. Every representative voted in favor of Resolution 2387A, which authorized unlimited military action against the Zelkin Empire. For the first time in human history, the entire planet was united behind a single cause. General Carlos Vega had been waiting for this moment. As Earth's supreme military commander, he had spent years preparing for potential alien threats. The public believed humanity's space forces were small and defensive. They had no idea what Vega had really been building. In secret military bases hidden throughout the solar system, Earth's true strength was revealed. The Horizon's Edge and Freedom's Call had been test vessels, designed to appear primitive to alien observers. While the Zelkins thought human technology was centuries behind theirs, Vega's engineers had been developing weapons that would shock the galaxy. Dr. Amanda Foster led the technical development teams at the classified Luna Base facility. She had been studying theoretical alien technology for decades, preparing for the day when humanity might face a superior enemy. Kevin's death gave her work new urgency. "We've been working on this project for 20 years, Amanda explained to President Barnes during a secure briefing. The Zelkins showed us their energy weapons and defensive systems during the diplomatic mission. We know how to defeat them. The centerpiece of Earth's hidden arsenal was the Retribution-class dreadnought. Colonel Steve Parker oversaw the construction of these massive warships in the asteroid belt, far from Earth's populated areas. Each ship was 3 times larger than the biggest Zelkin vessel and carried weapons designed specifically to penetrate alien defenses." "How many ships do we have?" Barnes asked during her inspection of the fleet. 57 Retribution-class dreadnoughts are ready for combat," Parker replied. "We also have 300 smaller warships and over 1,000 fighter craft. The Zelkins think we're primitives with a few exploration vessels. They're about to learn otherwise." But Earth's preparation went beyond building weapons. Intelligence Director Michelle Grant had been studying the Zelkin Empire's structure and weaknesses. Her agents had been gathering information about alien politics for years, preparing for this moment. "The Empire controls over 400 worlds, but they rule through fear," Michelle explained to the War Cabinet. "Most species serve the Zelkins because they have no choice. If we can show them that the Empire can be defeated, they'll join us." Michelle's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Earth would not just fight the Zelkins, they would liberate every species under Zelkin rule. The Empire's strength came from its size, but that same size would become a weakness when rebellion spread across their territory. Admiral Susan Blake, who had led the original diplomatic mission, volunteered to command the fleet despite her grief over Kevin's death. She had seen Zelkin arrogance firsthand and wanted to be the one to show them the consequences of murdering human children. "They think we're animals," Blake told her captains during the first strategy meeting. "They believe we'll cower in fear when they threaten us. Instead, we're going to teach them what happens when humans decide to fight." The preparation took 18 months. During that time, Earth's industries worked around the clock to produce weapons, ships, and supplies for the coming war. The entire planet's economy was focused on a single goal: making the Zelkin Empire pay for Kevin Walsh's death. Meanwhile, the Zelkins continued to rule their empire without concern. They had dismissed humanity as a minor threat and turned their attention to other matters. Intelligence reports suggested they had already forgotten about the incident with the human child. Captain Maria Santos led Earth's reconnaissance missions into Zelkin space. Her stealth ships gathered information about enemy fleet positions and military capabilities. The Zelkins never detected these intrusions, proving that human technology was more advanced than they realized. "Their fleets are spread thin across hundreds of systems," Maria reported. "They're not expecting an attack from anyone, especially not from humans. We have the element of surprise." Dr. Nathan Carter, who had witnessed Kevin's murder, worked with Amanda Foster's team to develop countermeasures against Zelkin technology. His first-hand observations of their weapons and defenses proved invaluable. "Their energy shields operate on a rotating frequency," Nathan explained. "If we can sync our weapons to match their rotation cycle, we can punch through their defenses. They've never faced an enemy that understood their technology this well." As Earth prepared for war, Ryan Walsh struggled with his grief. The father who had lost his son became a symbol for the entire human species. His testimony about Kevin's death was broadcast across the planet, reminding everyone why they were fighting. "My boy loved learning about other species," Ryan said during one of his speeches. "He was excited to meet aliens and make friends with them. Instead, they killed him for being curious. We cannot let his death be meaningless." The families of other crew members from the diplomatic mission also became advocates for war. They had seen the Zelkin Empire's cruelty firsthand and knew that humanity could never be safe while the Empire existed. Lieutenant Amy Clark, who had been on the bridge during first contact, now commanded her own warship. "They wanted us to be grateful for their protection," she told her crew. "Instead, we're going to show them what human protection really means." Engineer Sam Davis developed new communication systems that would allow human forces to coordinate with alien resistance groups. His technology could penetrate Zelkin jamming and reach oppressed species throughout the Empire. "When we strike, we won't be alone," Sam explained to the technical staff. "Every species that hates the Zelkins will know that the time for freedom has come." By the end of the preparation period, Earth had transformed from a single-world civilization into a military power that could challenge the galaxy's greatest empire. Hidden shipyards produced vessels of war, while secret training facilities prepared soldiers for battles among the stars. The Zelkan Empire had ruled through fear for over 1,000 years. They believed their power was absolute and their empire eternal. They had crushed every rebellion and defeated every enemy. No species had ever successfully challenged their dominance. But they had never faced humanity. President Barnes gave the final authorization for Operation Justice on the anniversary of Kevin Walsh's death. As she signed the orders, she looked at the photo of the smiling 8-year-old boy who had become the symbol of human determination. For Kevin, she said simply. Admiral Blake received the launch codes while standing on the bridge of the dreadnought Vengeance. Around her, the largest fleet in human history prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed. 57 massive warships and their escort vessels would carry humanity's rage to the heart of the Zelkan Empire. The war for galactic freedom was about to begin. Commander Thex felt his command center shake as human fire found its target. Warning lights flashed as critical systems failed one after another. In less than 5 minutes, the station's weapons were offline and its shields were down. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet," his communications officer reported. "This is Admiral Blake," the human woman's voice filled the command center. "Your weapons are destroyed and your fleet is defeated. Prepare to receive boarding parties. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force." Thex looked at his tactical display. The human fleet had destroyed or disabled every Zelkan ship in the system without losing a single vessel of their own. It was the most complete military defeat in Zelkan history. Major Kate Sullivan led the human boarding parties that secured Kepler Station. Her soldiers moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, showing mercy to Zelkan civilians while taking military personnel prisoner. They had trained for this moment for over a year. "Station secured, Admiral," Kate reported over her communicator. "Minimal casualties on both sides. The Zelkans are cooperating with surrender procedures." But the real shock came when the humans began their psychological warfare campaign. Every communication channel in the system suddenly carried the same broadcast, the story of Kevin Walsh's murder and the Empire's cover-up. The message was transmitted in dozens of languages, reaching every species in Zelkan space. It showed recordings that the humans had somehow obtained of the diplomatic reception, including clear images of High Chancellor Vortak striking down an innocent child. "This is why we fight," Admiral Blake's voice accompanied the images. "Not for conquest, not for resources, but for justice. The Zelkan Empire believes that might makes right. Today, they learn that humanity is mightier." Subcommander Thex watched the broadcast in horror. The humans had somehow recorded everything that happened at the diplomatic reception. The Empire's cover-up was completely exposed, showing the galaxy the true nature of Zelkan justice. Within hours, the story of Kevin Walsh was spreading across the Empire faster than lightspeed communications could carry it. Species that had served the Zelkans for centuries suddenly saw their masters as they really were, bullies who killed children and lied about it. Dr. Nathan Carter worked with the human intelligence teams to extract information from Kepler Station's computers. What they found confirmed their worst fears about the Zelkan Empire. The station's records contained evidence of dozens of similar incidents where aliens had been killed for minor offenses. "They've been doing this for generations," Nathan reported to Admiral Blake. "Any species that shows the slightest disrespect gets punished severely. Fear is how they maintain control." Admiral Blake studied the intelligence reports while her fleet prepared to move deeper into Zelkan space. The victory at Kepler Station was just the beginning. Earth's plan called for a series of strikes that would cripple the Empire's ability to respond to rebellion. "Send a message to Earth," Blake ordered. "Tell them that Phase 1 is complete. The Zelkans know we're coming now." The news of humanity's victory reached the Zelkan capital within days. High Chancellor Vortak, the being who had murdered Kevin Walsh, received the reports with growing rage. The primitive humans had somehow built a fleet and destroyed one of his outposts. "How is this possible?" Vortak demanded of his advisors. "They had no military capabilities when we expelled them from our space. His intelligence chief, Admiral Corex, studied the battle reports with growing concern. The human ships use technology we've never seen before. Their weapons can penetrate our shields and their fighters are faster than our interceptors. Vorthak's yellow eyes blazed with fury. I don't care about their technology. They're animals who dare to challenge the Empire. Assemble the war fleets. We'll crush them like insects. But even as Vorthak made his threats, reports were coming in from across the Empire. The humans' broadcast about Kevin Walsh was inspiring rebellions on dozens of worlds. Species that had accepted Zelkan rule for centuries were suddenly questioning their master's authority. The Altarians were the first to openly revolt, declaring independence from the Empire and offering to join the human cause. The vegan colonies followed within days, along with mining operations in 3 other systems. Admiral Blake smiled as she read the intelligence reports. Earth's plan was working perfectly. The Zelkan Empire's greatest strength, its size, was becoming its greatest weakness as rebellion spread faster than their fleets could respond. For Kevin, she said quietly, looking at the photo of the murdered boy that she kept on her command console. We're just getting started. The rebellion began on Altair 7, a mining world that had served the Zelkan Empire for 300 years. The blue-skinned Altarians had always been considered model subjects, hardworking, obedient, and never causing trouble for their masters. General Rick Thompson was not really named Rick Thompson. That was the human name the translators gave him because his real name could not be pronounced by human vocal cords. But he had chosen to use the human name as a symbol of the alliance between his people and Earth. Rick stood before a gathering of 10,000 Altarian workers in the main mining facility. Behind him, screens showed images from the human broadcast about Kevin Walsh's murder. The crowd was silent, but their anger was visible in their glowing eyes. For 3 centuries, we have told ourselves that serving the Empire was necessary, Rick said in his deep, rumbling voice. We believed that the Zelkans protected us from worse fates. Today, we see the truth. They are bullies who kill children and call it justice. The crowd erupted in angry shouts. The Altarians had children too. The idea of a powerful being murdering a curious young one filled them with rage that overcame their fear of Zelkan retaliation. The humans have shown us that the Empire can be defeated, Rick continued. Their fleet destroyed Kepler Station without losing a single ship. If they can fight the Zelkans, so can we. Within hours, the Altarian rebellion had seized control of their entire star system. The small Zelkan garrison was overwhelmed by miners who had suddenly remembered how to fight. More importantly, the Altarians controlled the largest dilithium mines in the sector, resources that the Empire desperately needed for their faster-than-light engines. The news of the Altarian revolt reached Earth through secret communication channels that engineer Sam Davis had established. His advanced transmission systems could penetrate Zelkan jamming and reach rebel groups across the galaxy. This is better than we hoped, Sam reported to President Barnes during their secure briefing. The rebellion is spreading faster than the Empire can respond. We're getting requests for help from dozens of species. On the ocean world of Aquatica, the amphibious Nemo people rose up against their Zelkan overlords. They had been forced to harvest rare minerals from the deep ocean floors for centuries. When they learned about Kevin Walsh's murder, they decided that enough was enough. Captain Maria Santos led a small human fleet to support the Nemo rebellion. Her ships arrived just as the Zelkans were sending reinforcements to crush the uprising. The battle above Aquatica's blue oceans became a symbol of the growing alliance between humanity and the oppressed species of the galaxy. We fight not just for ourselves, but for every being who has suffered under Zelkan rule, Maria announced as her ships engaged the enemy fleet. Today, we show the galaxy that freedom is worth any price. The human ships moved like dancers through space, their advanced technology making Zelkan vessels look clumsy and slow. Maria's flagship, the Liberty, led the charge against a Zelkan battle cruiser 3 times its size. The cruiser's energy shields flickered and failed under concentrated human fire. Below them on Aquatica's surface, the Nemo people watched the battle through their underwater cities. When they saw the massive Zelkan cruiser explode in a ball of flame, they knew that their freedom was within reach. Dr. Amanda Foster had been working with alien scientists to develop new weapons and defenses. The technical exchange between humans and rebel species was producing innovations that neither side could have achieved alone. The vegan engineers have created a new shield generator, Amanda reported to the War Council. Combined with our weapons technology, it makes our ships nearly invincible. The Zelkins have never faced anything like it. The rebellion was not just about military victories. Intelligence Director Michelle Grant had been working with underground networks throughout the Empire to spread the truth about Zelkin rule. Her agents smuggled recordings of Zelkin atrocities to species that had never known about the Empire's darker side. On the forest world of Verdant, the tree-dwelling Sylph people learned that the Zelkins had been poisoning their soil for decades to increase mineral production. The environmental damage had been blamed on natural causes, but human intelligence revealed the truth. They have been slowly killing our world, said the Sylph leader who called herself Willow in human language. Our children grow sick because the Zelkins want more profits from our mines. This cannot continue. The Sylph rebellion was different from the others. Instead of direct military action, they used their knowledge of biotechnology to create viruses that targeted Zelkin computer systems. Within days, Imperial administration centers across a dozen worlds were crippled by biological cyber attacks. Colonel Steve Parker commanded the human fleet that supported the rebellion in the Centauri system. The Centaurians were a proud warrior race that had been conquered by the Zelkins centuries ago. They had never forgotten their defeat and had been waiting for a chance to fight back. We remember when our grandfathers flew through space as free beings, said War Chief Marcus during the Alliance ceremony. The humans have given us hope that our grandchildren might know freedom again. The combined human-Centaurian fleet was a force that terrified Zelkin commanders. Human technology paired with Centaurian ferocity created a fighting force that the Empire had never encountered. Their joint attack on the Zelkin fortress world of Titan's Gate became legendary throughout the galaxy. But the rebellion faced challenges too. High Chancellor Vorthak had finally convinced the Zelkin High Command to take the human threat seriously. Massive Imperial fleets were being assembled to crush the uprising before it could spread further. Admiral Korex commanded the largest Zelkin armada in history as it moved toward the rebel systems. Over 500 Imperial warships carried weapons designed to sterilize entire planets. The Empire was prepared to commit genocide rather than lose control of their territory. We will make examples of every world that defies us, Vorthak announced to the Imperial Senate. The humans and their allies will learn the cost of challenging the Empire. We will turn their planets into monuments to Imperial power. The threat reached Admiral Blake through intelligence channels. Her fleet was powerful, but 500 Zelkin ships represented a force that could overwhelm even human technology through sheer numbers. We need to change our strategy, Blake told her captains during an emergency meeting. We can't fight the entire Imperial Navy in a direct battle. We need to be smarter. The solution came from an unexpected source. The elderly philosopher Sage, leader of the peaceful meditation world, offered an alliance that surprised everyone. The mediators had never involved themselves in galactic politics, preferring to study philosophy and science. We have watched the galaxy for 1,000 years, Sage explained through holographic communication. The Zelkin Empire brings only suffering and fear. It is time for wisdom to guide strength. The mediators possessed the most advanced scanning technology in the galaxy. They could track Zelkin fleet movements across hundreds of light years and predict where the Empire would strike next. Combined with human firepower and rebel determination, this intelligence created opportunities that no one had imagined. Lieutenant Amy Clark commanded the reconnaissance mission that discovered the Empire's greatest weakness. Deep in Zelkin space, she found the secret shipyards where Imperial fleets were built and maintained. The facilities were heavily defended but represented the heart of Zelkin military power. If we can destroy their shipyards, the Empire won't be able to replace their losses, Amy reported. They'll be forced to retreat to defend their remaining facilities. The plan that emerged from the Rebel Alliance was ambitious beyond anything anyone had attempted. While Admiral Korex's massive fleet hunted for human ships in the outer systems, the rebels would strike at the Empire's industrial heart. It would be the largest military operation in galactic history. Human ships would provide the firepower, Altarian miners would sabotage Zelkin supply lines, Nemo's submarines would attack underwater facilities, Sylph biotechnology would disable Imperial computers, and Centaurian warriors would lead ground assaults. "This is our moment," Admiral Blake announced to the combined fleet. "We fight not for conquest but for freedom. We fight not for ourselves but for every being who dreams of a galaxy without fear." As the rebel armada prepared for the most dangerous mission of the war, a message arrived from Earth. President Barnes had recorded a special broadcast for all the species fighting against Zelkan tyranny. "Kevin Walsh was just one child," the president said, "but his death has awakened something in the galaxy that the Empire never expected. Hope. The hope that things can be better. The hope that might does not make right. The hope that freedom is worth any sacrifice." The rebellion that had begun with humanity's grief over a murdered child was about to become the force that would reshape the galaxy forever. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Retribution, looking at the planet that had haunted his dreams for 2 years. Varix Prime hung in space like a green and gold jewel, beautiful and terrible at the same time. It was here that Kevin Walsh had been murdered. It was here that the Zelkan Empire's reign of terror would finally end. The human fleet had grown beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Over 300 ships from Earth joined forces with vessels from 40 different rebel species. The combined armada stretched across space like a metal constellation, representing the largest alliance in galactic history. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from the Planetary Defense Force," reported Commander Lisa Hughes from the communications station. She had been promoted after Admiral Blake's heroic death during the shipyard raids 3 months earlier. Jake nodded grimly. Blake had died destroying the Empire's main construction facilities, crippling their ability to build new ships. Her sacrifice had made this moment possible. "Put them through," Jake ordered. The holographic image of a Zelkan general appeared on the main screen. His scales were darker than most of his species, and his eyes burned with desperate fury. "This is General Vex of the Varix Prime Defense Force," the alien said. "You are trespassing in the sacred heart of the Empire. Withdraw immediately or face total destruction." Jake stepped forward, his face calm despite the rage burning in his chest. "This is Admiral Morrison of the United Earth Fleet. We have come for High Chancellor Vorthak and the others responsible for murdering Kevin Walsh. Surrender them to face justice, and your planet will be spared." General Vex's expression twisted with contempt. "You dare demand the surrender of our leaders? You are insects compared to the might of the Empire. We have orbital defense platforms that can destroy entire fleets." "Then you'll have to use them," Jake replied quietly. "Because we're not leaving without justice for that murdered child." The communication ended abruptly. Jake turned to his tactical officer, Colonel Alex Turner, who had been studying the planet's defenses for months. "What are we facing, Alex?" Jake asked. Alex activated the holographic display showing Varix Prime and its surrounding space. Red dots marked hundreds of defensive positions around the planet. 200 orbital weapons platforms, each one capable of destroying a capital ship, Alex reported. 50 defense stations with energy shields and fighter squadrons. Plus the planetary shield generator that can protect the entire world from orbital bombardment. It was a fortress that had never been successfully attacked in over 1,000 years of Zelkan rule. The Empire's leaders had always felt safe behind these defenses, knowing that no enemy could penetrate their layers of protection. But they had never faced human determination powered by righteous fury. "Begin the siege," Jake ordered. The battle for Varix Prime began with the largest fighter engagement in galactic history. Lieutenant Commander Peter Young led over 2,000 human and allied fighters against the Zelkan defensive squadrons. The space around the planet erupted in flashes of energy as ships twisted and turned in deadly combat. Captain Tony Rodriguez commanded the assault on the orbital platforms. His heavy cruisers used concentrated firepower to punch through Zelkan shields while staying mobile enough to avoid return fire. Each platform that fell reduced the Empire's ability to defend their capital. But the real key to victory was the work of Dr. Beth Cameron and her scientific team. Beth had been studying Zelkan shield technology since the war began, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. She had found something that no one expected. "The planetary shield has a fatal flaw," Beth reported to Jake during the battle. "It operates on a harmonic frequency that creates resonance points. If we can hit those exact locations with synchronized fire, the entire shield will collapse. It was a complex plan that required perfect timing and coordination between dozens of ships. Jake looked around his bridge at the crew members who had followed him from the first diplomatic mission. They had all been there when Kevin died. They all understood what this moment meant. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," Jake announced over the fleet communication system. "Today we end the nightmare that began 2 years ago. Today we show the galaxy that the murder of innocents will not go unpunished. For Kevin Walsh and all the others who have suffered under Zelkan tyranny, attack." The combined fleet moved as one organism, human ships and alien vessels working together with perfect precision. They had trained for this moment through months of joint exercises, learning to fight as a unified force despite their different technologies and cultures. The first wave of attacks focused on the outer defensive ring. Altarian mining ships, converted into mobile weapons platforms, used their industrial equipment to tear apart Zelkan stations piece by piece. The blue-skinned aliens had learned to channel their rage into devastating effectiveness. Centaurian warriors, flying in ships designed for close combat, engaged the Zelkan fighters with savage fury. Their war cries echoed across communication channels as they avenged centuries of humiliation under Imperial rule. The aquatic Nemo people provided underwater assault capabilities that the Zelkans had never prepared for. Their submarines attacked the ocean-based defense installations on Varix Prime's surface, using sonic weapons that could shatter reinforced structures. General Vex watched his carefully constructed defenses crumble with growing horror. The combined rebel fleet was using tactics that no Zelkan commander had ever encountered. They fought with a coordination that seemed impossible between so many different species. "Sir, the outer ring is compromised," his tactical officer reported. "We've lost 60% of the orbital platforms." Vex activated the emergency protocols, calling for reinforcements from every system within range. But most of the Imperial fleets were scattered across the galaxy, trying to contain rebellions that were erupting everywhere at once. The siege entered its second phase as human dreadnoughts moved closer to the planet. These massive ships carried weapons designed specifically to penetrate Zelkan defenses. Their energy beams struck the planetary shield with carefully calculated precision. Dr. Cameron monitored the shield frequencies from her position on the science vessel Discovery. "Resonance building," she reported. "All ships need to maintain exact firing patterns for another 12 minutes." Those 12 minutes felt like hours as Zelkan defenders threw everything they had at the attacking fleet. Energy beams and missile volleys filled space with deadly light. Ships on both sides exploded in balls of flame and debris. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the cruiser Freedom, died when her ship took a direct hit from a defense platform. But even as her vessel broke apart, her crew continued firing until the last moment. Lieutenant Amy Clark's destroyer Phoenix lost its engines and drifted helplessly toward a Zelkan battle station. Instead of abandoning ship, Amy ordered ramming speed and drove her vessel directly into the enemy position. Both ships vanished in a nuclear fireball that lit up half the planet. Their sacrifices were not in vain. At exactly the right moment, Dr. Cameron's calculations proved correct. The planetary shield flickered, wavered, and then collapsed completely. "Shield down," Beth announced triumphantly. "Varix Prime is defenseless." But Jake Morrison was not interested in destroying the planet. His target was much more specific: the Imperial Palace, where High Chancellor Vortak was hiding behind layers of armed guards and automated defenses. Colonel Alex Turner led the ground assault with a mixed force of human marines and alien allies. Their dropships descended through the atmosphere under cover of orbital fire support. The landing zone was a park where Zelkan children played, a deliberate choice to show that humans protected innocents even during war. The fighting through Varix Prime's capital city was fierce but brief. The Zelkan military had been designed to fight space battles and control orbital territory. They were unprepared for ground combat against opponents who fought with personal stakes in the outcome. Engineer Sam Davis had developed communication jamming equipment that prevented Zelkan forces from coordinating their defense. His technology turned the Empire's own communication networks against them, spreading confusion and panic through their ranks. The Imperial Palace was a fortress within a fortress, protected by energy barriers and automated weapon systems. But the human assault team had been planning this attack for months. They knew every weak point and defensive position. Colonel Turner's forces reached the throne room just as High Chancellor Vorthak was attempting to escape through secret passages. The Zelkan leader who had murdered Kevin Walsh was finally cornered like the coward he had always been. "You will not take me alive," Vorthak snarled, reaching for a hidden weapon. "We're not here to kill you," Alex replied, his voice cold as space. "We're here to make sure you face justice. Dead tyrants become martyrs. Live ones become examples." The capture of Vorthak marked the end of organized Zelkan resistance on Varix Prime. Within hours, the planet's government had surrendered unconditionally. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years was finally broken. Admiral Morrison stood in the same throne room where Zelkan emperors had issued decrees of conquest and oppression for generations. In his hands, he held a small photograph, Kevin Walsh smiling at the camera just before the diplomatic mission that had led to his death. "It's over, Kevin," Jake said quietly. "Justice is finally coming." But even as victory celebrations began across the rebel fleet, Jake knew that the real work was just beginning. Defeating the Empire was only the first step. Building something better in its place would be the true test of whether Kevin Walsh's death had meaning. The galaxy was about to discover what humans meant when they talked about justice, freedom, and the rights of all sentient beings. The Zelkan Empire was dead. Something better was about to be born. The trial of High Chancellor Vorthak was held on the neutral world of Haven, a planet that had never been part of any empire or alliance. Representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered to witness what many called the most important legal proceeding in galactic history. The courthouse was a simple building made of local stone, deliberately chosen to contrast with the elaborate palaces where Zelkan justice had been dispensed for centuries. Judge Sarah Wilson, a human legal expert, presided over a tribunal that included representatives from 12 different species. Vorthak sat in the defendant's chair, his once proud posture broken by months of imprisonment. The Zelkan who had ruled over billions of beings now looked small and pathetic under the bright lights of the courtroom. His elaborate armor had been replaced with simple prison clothing. Ryan Walsh took the witness stand on the trial's first day. Kevin's father had aged 10 years in the two since his son's death, but his voice was strong and clear as he spoke about the boy who had been murdered for the crime of curiosity. Kevin loved learning about other species, Ryan testified, his words broadcast across the galaxy. He was excited to meet aliens and make friends with them. He never hurt anyone in his short life. The defendant killed him for accidentally bumping a display case. The courtroom was silent as Ryan described his son's last moments. Even some of the Zelkan observers seemed moved by the father's grief. It was impossible to listen to his testimony without understanding the pure evil of what Vorthak had done. Dr. Nathan Carter presented the medical evidence that proved Kevin had been killed by Vorthak's energy staff. The detailed forensic analysis left no doubt about what had happened during that terrible reception 2 years earlier. "The injuries are consistent with a close-range energy weapon strike," Nathan explained to the tribunal. "The child died instantly. There was no medical emergency, no natural cause of death. This was deliberate murder." But the trial was about more than just Kevin's death. Prosecutor Linda Adams, another human legal expert, presented evidence of hundreds of similar atrocities committed by Zelkan authorities across the galaxy. The Empire's records, captured during the war, revealed a pattern of cruelty that shocked even hardened observers. This defendant and his government systematically murdered, tortured, and oppressed billions of sentient beings, Linda declared. Kevin Walsh was not their only victim. He was simply the victim whose death finally brought them to justice. The evidence included recordings of Zelkan officials discussing the discipline of subject species, documents authorizing the execution of civilians for minor infractions, and reports detailing the deliberate poisoning of entire planets to increase resource extraction. Defense attorney Marcus Green, a human lawyer who had volunteered to represent Vorthak to ensure a fair trial, argued that his client had been following Zelkan law and custom. He claimed that cultural differences should be considered when judging actions that occurred within the Empire. "My client acted according to the legal and social norms of his society," Green argued. "While we may find his actions reprehensible, he should not be judged by standards that did not exist in his culture." But this defense crumbled when other Zelkan witnesses testified against Vorthak. General Rick Thompson of the Altarians presented evidence that even by Zelkan standards, killing Kevin had been excessive and unjustified. I served in the Zelkin military for 50 years, testified former Imperial Admiral Kex, who had defected during the rebellion. Never in all that time did I see a senior officer kill a child for such a minor incident. The defendant's actions shocked even his own people. The trial lasted 3 months. During that time, the galaxy watched as the full extent of Zelkin cruelty was revealed. Species that had lived under Imperial rule for centuries learned the truth about their masters for the first time. The Sylph people discovered that their children's illnesses had been caused by deliberate Zelkin poisoning. The Centaurians learned that their homeworld's conquest had involved the massacre of millions of civilians. The Nemo found out that their sacred breeding grounds had been strip-mined for rare minerals. President Helen Barnes testified about Earth's response to Kevin's murder and the decision to go to war against the Empire. Her words carried the weight of a species that had united in righteous fury. "We did not seek this conflict," Barnes explained. "But when we learned that an innocent child had been murdered by those who claimed to represent civilized government, we knew that justice demanded action. The Zelkin Empire ruled through fear. We chose to show them the power of hope." Admiral Jake Morrison described the military campaign that had brought down the Empire. His testimony focused not on the battles won, but on the civilians protected and the species liberated from tyranny. "Every world we freed became an ally in the cause of justice," Morrison stated. The Empire's subjects did not support their masters. They were simply too afraid to resist until they saw that resistance was possible. The tribunal also heard from victims of Zelkin oppression throughout the galaxy. A vegan mother whose children had been taken as tribute to serve in Zelkin households. An Altarian miner whose brother had been executed for asking questions about working conditions. A mediator philosopher whose temple had been destroyed for teaching ideas that contradicted imperial doctrine. Each testimony added to the growing mountain of evidence against not just Vorthak personally, but the entire system of government he had represented. The trial became a reckoning with 1,000 years of tyranny. Dr. Amanda Foster presented evidence about the Empire's suppression of technological development among subject species. The Zelkins had deliberately kept other races primitive to maintain their advantage in power. They didn't just rule through military force, Amanda explained. They controlled knowledge itself, preventing their subjects from developing technologies that might threaten imperial dominance. The defense's final argument was an appeal for mercy based on Vorthak's age and the cultural context of his actions. Marcus Green argued that executing the former chancellor would make the new galactic order no better than the empire it had replaced. "Justice does not require vengeance," Green stated. "The tribunal has an opportunity to show that the new galaxy will be governed by mercy as well as law." But the prosecution's closing arguments focused on the need to establish clear standards for the treatment of all sentient beings. Linda Adams argued that some crimes were so fundamental that cultural context could not excuse them. "The defendant murdered a child," she declared. "No civilization, no matter how different from our own, can claim that such an act represents justice. If we excuse this crime, we tell the galaxy that power still trumps right." The tribunal deliberated for 7 days. During that time, massive crowds gathered on hundreds of worlds to await the verdict. The trial had become a symbol of the galaxy's transformation from rule by fear to rule by law. Judge Wilson announced the verdict to a courtroom packed with representatives from every known species. The decision was unanimous: guilty on all charges, including murder, crimes against sentient beings, and systematic oppression. "The evidence shows beyond any doubt that the defendant committed acts that violate the most basic principles of civilized conduct," Wilson declared. His actions were not justified by law, custom, or military necessity. They were the products of a system that valued power over life. The sentence was life imprisonment on the remote human penal colony of New Alcatraz, a planet where Vorthak would spend his remaining years in solitude, contemplating the consequences of his choices. Fleet Admiral Danny Clark oversaw the establishment of the new Galactic Federation in the months following the trial. The organization was based on principles that the old empire had never recognized: the equality of all sentient species and the protection of individual rights. "Never again will one species dominate others through force," Clark announced at the Federation's founding ceremony. "Never again will children be murdered for the crime of curiosity." The new government established the Kevin Walsh Memorial Institute for Galactic Justice, dedicated to protecting the rights of young beings throughout the galaxy. Ryan Walsh, Kevin's father, served as its first director. "My son's death was a tragedy," Ryan said at the Institute's opening ceremony. "But if his memory helps protect other children from similar fates, then perhaps some good can come from our loss." President Laura Kim, who had succeeded Barnes after the war, delivered the closing speech at the memorial ceremony for Kevin Walsh. The boy's name was now known on every world in the galaxy as the symbol of innocence protected and justice served. "Kevin Walsh was just one child," Kim said as she stood before a statue of the smiling 8-year-old. "But his story changed the galaxy forever. He represents every being who has suffered under tyranny and every hope for a better future." The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence observed simultaneously on thousands of worlds. Across the galaxy, beings of every species paused to remember the human child whose death had sparked a revolution in how civilized societies treated their most vulnerable members. The Zelkan Empire was gone, replaced by a federation based on cooperation rather than domination. The galaxy had learned that strength without justice was mere brutality, and that the true measure of civilization was how it treated its children. Kevin Walsh's legacy lived on in every law that protected the innocent, every treaty that recognized the equality of species, and every child who could explore the galaxy without fear. His death had been avenged, but more importantly, his memory had helped create a better universe for all who came after. The boy who had loved learning about aliens had taught the galaxy the most important lesson of all, that justice delayed is not justice denied, and that even the smallest life has infinite value when measured by the love it inspires and the changes it creates.